You know, growing up Polish, I used to love pączki. What I didn't realize at the time is they're actually donuts, fried donuts filled with jam, but they were so good. I had to find a way to make healthy Polish pączki, and I have, and they're not fried. So let me show you how I do it. Okay, we're going to start with 1½ cups of all-purpose flour into a mixer, and a 1/4 cup of sugar. This is the dry ingredients first. A 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and 1 package of instant yeast. So let me tell you about this yeast, okay? This is the kind that I use, and this is the kind that does not require proofing. You can just put right in with the dry ingredients. It also reduces the first rising, so you save time and work with not proofing the dough. So this is the kind of yeast to use. And that's your dry ingredients. You just mix them up a little bit, and then we're going to add the liquids. And we start with 2/3 of a cup of milk. Now the milk needs to be, for this particular yeast, at least 120 degrees. So it's really helpful to have an instant read thermometer. And it is, yeah, between 120 and 130 according to the package directions. So we're going to add 2/3 a cup of milk around 120 degrees. 3 tablespoons of oil. Now here's the thing, I'm using canola oil because it's flavorless and heart healthy. I always use it for baking. This would normally be melted butter, but I'm not doing it because it's too much saturated fat. So it's 3 tablespoons of canola oil. 2 egg yolks. This is a kind of an eggy recipe, so it's 2 egg yolks. And it's a 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla. This is my brand. And that's all the liquid ingredients right there. Now we're going to mix this up, and you beat it for about 2 minutes. Okay, it's been about 2 minutes, and you can see it's still a very liquid kind of a dough, and we're going to thicken it up a little bit now with about a 1/4 cup of flour, additional flour. And I'm just going to stir that in slowly, kind of the way you would make sort of any other kind of a bread dough or something. And it's usually pretty close to a 1/4 cup. You just have to gauge it until it's thick enough so you can kind of knead it and make it into a solid dough. So here's the dough. You scrape it all out. It's still a little bit sticky, but we're going to fix that. You can see it's a little bit yellow from the 2 egg yolks, but that's what makes pączki so good. All right. Now, the kneading process is easier if you have a scraper, which I have. I use a scraper for just about every time I knead anything, and I bake a lot. A scraper just helps to pick it up. Now, I've got my extra flour. I'll just put a little bit more on here. And you're just going to work it until it becomes kind of, as they say, smooth and elastic. But it always helps to get it started with the scraper. So about 50 turns is all it really takes. 50 turns like this, and you'll see the dough comes all together nicely. So 3, 4, 5, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50. And that's usually enough. And you can see it's a nice active dough here. And when you use that particular yeast, all you have to do, instead of rising it for an hour, you just cover it with some plastic and let it rest for 10 minutes. That's it. So that's it. I'll see you in 10 minutes. Okay, it's been 10 minutes. Now we're ready to make some pączki. I have a baking sheet right here lined with parchment paper ready to go. We're going to unwrap the dough, and we're going to roll this dough about a 1/2 inch thick, but it might stick a little, but these scrapers, like I said, are great. So you want a nicely floured board so they don't stick. And we're going to roll this just about a 1/2 inch thick. It doesn't take long at all. And a little, you know what, I'm going to put flour on here because we're going to dip the cutter into the flour, so that'll be easier. And a little bit of flour on the top so it doesn't stick. And doesn't matter what shape, because you're going to use a round cutter. So I think that's how long it takes. You can almost pat this out. But of course the rolling pin gives you a nice even thickness. So that's about a 1/2 inch thick. I'm going to use a 2.5 inch round cutter, like a biscuit cutter. And as with most times you cut, it's good to dip the cutter into flour every time you use it. So we're going to dip into the flour and cut. Whoops. Dip into the flour, cut, flour cut. And I think we can squeeze one more out of this. And then you find something to lift them with, and I have a little lifter here, and they go onto your the baking sheet. Okay. I'll probably get 2 more out of this, but you just take the dough and kind of lift it up again, smush it together, and put a little bit more flour down. And I think we can get 2 more out of this. There we go. Yeah, and I kind of roll longwise like that, so you have room for 2 more cuts. So into the flour, 1, and flatten it down, 2. Okay, got room there, and got room here. Okay, that's all there is to it. So now we're going to cover this with a cloth or like a tea towel, and put it in a warm place to rise for about 45 minutes. I'm going to put them in my warming drawer. If you can put a lamp over it, try to find a warm spot because they'll rise up faster. Set your timer for 45 minutes. And there. Pączki are traditionally filled with jam, usually plum jam, but you can use any kind of jam. However, I love custard filling. And if you're going to use a custard filling, I'll show you how to make it, but you have to do it now while they're rising because this has to cool before you fill the pączki. So here's the recipe, very, very simple. It's a 1/4 cup of sugar into a small saucepan, 1 tablespoon of cornstarch, and 1 cup of 1% milk. All the milk I use is 1%, as I used before in the recipe as well. And the best way to incorporate it is to slowly whisk it in, because that way you won't get any lumps. So you slowly whisk in the milk. Take your time. If you dump it all in, you're likely going to get lumps. So you just whisk it in. There. And the same thing with the egg yolk. There's 1 egg yolk in this recipe. We'll put that in. Whisk it all together. All right, and once it's all whisked in, you just transfer it to a burner, put it on about a medium high, and you bring it up to a boil, and keep stirring because that way you make sure you have no lumps and also it won't burn. And after about 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes, it'll come to a boil, and it's done. It's that simple. Okay, it's been about 1.5 minutes maybe, and you can hear it bubbling a little bit. So take a look. It's starting to thicken up, and I'm actually going to switch from the whisk. Whoops! Lower the temperature, or you'll have a big mess to clean up. I'm going to switch to a spoonula, and that's really it. You just bring it to a nice bubbling boil like that, and it's done, because it's going to thicken as it cools. So, and again, this has to be completely cool if you're going to fill the pączki with it. So the best way to cool it is to spread it on a plate. Expose it to as much air as possible. And if you're a fast cook, you can even put it in the fridge to cool, but it has to be completely cool. But usually when you expose it to a lot of air like that, it'll cool. You don't have to do the custard filling. It just happens to be my favorite. We'll do jam when we fill the pączki, but this is how you make custard if you want to do custard filling. So be back when they're all risen up and ready to go in the oven. Okay, it's been about 45 minutes, and this is what they should look like after about 45 minutes. Now, they don't have to be doubled like you're baking bread, just kind of puffy like that. And it might take you an hour if you don't have a really warm spot, but that's how they should look. And they go into a 375, preheated oven at 375 for 10 minutes. So let me put them in the oven. I've got that all heated up. And set your timer for 10 minutes. And while they're baking, you're going to get ready to do the filling, which is the really fun part. So it's a little bit messy too. So we're going to lay down some wax paper. I love to use wax paper. And we're going to brush these with melted butter. So you melt about a tablespoon of butter, which I've done here, and you get a brush to brush them with. We're going to coat them with sugar. And I find it easiest to do in kind of a produce type soft bag. So about a 1/3 cup of sugar into the bag for coating. And then for filling, get your fillings ready. I'm going to use, it has to be a thick jam. I'm going to use 4 fruits. but you can use other flavors certainly, but it has to be a thick jam. Apricot jam works really well, but this is the one I'm going to use today. And I also want to show you the custard. Remember I told you it was going to thicken? Look at this. I'll put it in the fridge for a few minutes, and it's nice and thick, and that's perfect for filling, because if it's too soft, it'll kind of run out. So, and I found the best possible thing to fill these things. I got this at the grocery store. It was $5.49, and it has that long tip, which you just insert and fill very, very easy. So this is the perfect way to fill these things. And you even get your bag ready. If you've filled anything before, you fold down the bag about halfway. That way you'll fill it, and then you'll put it back up. But we'll do that when they're ready to go. So that's it. We'll wait for them to come out of the oven, and we'll finish up these Pączki. Thank you, little man. It's been 10 minutes. They should be done. Let's see how they look. Oh, yeah. This is absolutely perfect. Look at that. That's exactly how they should look. You see, they puffed up really nicely, even though they weren't doubled in size. So now what we're going to do, this is the fun part. We're going to coat each one with melted butter. It's messy, so I'm going to put on some gloves to work with. We coat each one with melted butter. That's the only butter in this recipe, is 1 tablespoon in all the Pączki. We're going to roll them in sugar while they're hot, and then fill them. So, okay, that's why it's nice to have everything ready to go when they come out. And you can work with them hot, it's fine. So, you take one, and you just coat, it is messy, you just coat the top and side, you don't have to do the bottom, with melted butter. You toss it in the bag. When I say toss, you really do toss. You just kind of roll it around. That's why the produce bag works for this, because it's soft, coats it with a little sugar, and that's it. And then they look like that. Okay, they all have the melted butter and the sugar. Now we're ready to fill. We have our bag all ready. We have the jam. We're going to put some jam in the bag. You just kind of twist it until it starts to come out, and you keep an eye on that tip. Get a good grip over here to push it out the end, and oh, there it comes. It's ready to go. So this is how easy it is. You take it, you just poke it in the side like that, and squeeze. That you do by feel, by how much you feel like is going to be going in there. Put them on a plate, take another one, poke it in the side, and squeeze. Keep a grip right here on this so it doesn't come out the other end, and squeeze with your hand. That's it. Okay? Okay, they're all done and filled. Remember, 1 tablespoon of butter in all of these Pączki, no grease, light as can be, and let me show you how they look inside. Look at this. Look at that. Does that look awesome? Look at that.